Hello there, folks, and welcome to the stream. My name is Mike D'Angelo, aka That Tall Sky. We are doing a special, mini Quantum Quest thing today. You can still hear in my voice. On Tuesday, I was saying that I was feeling a little under the weather. Wednesday, I didn't do anything just because I wasn't even 80% really. And today, I started off better, but as the day winds on, certain things start to make you feel a little crummy. So we never had anything planned for today. I couldn't get four players together quick enough. We do have in 2 weeks our next game scheduled. That's going to be just an exhibition game. I do still want to do a championship game, but everything kind of came together in a nice way because I don't know that I would have been up to doing an hour to hour and a half episode today with the way that I'm feeling. A little yucky. Plus, there's we're recovering from the Lehigh Valley Comic Con still. I've got a work event that I'm doing this Saturday that's gonna kind of wipe out my Saturday. So it's nice to have this little look at what we're doing tonight with QQ. So I figured we've been playing the game. We've played at least 4 games at this point, not including the ones that we like the exhibition games that we were doing last year. So I think we're probably up to like 7 total. But anyway, I don't think that we've ever seen every card, and I figured this would be a good opportunity for us to go entirely through the set that you get in the blue box. This is the premium version that you would get. We haven't kickstarted it officially yet, but it would come with the quote-unquote torture chambers, which are some meaner versions of our cards from the original box set. In any case, we'll take a little bit of a dive into the chambers and the adventures and just kind of talk through them. And then if we have time, if I'm feeling up to it, we'll look at the process of like getting together the structure for the game that we'll play on August 29th. So let's take a dive into this. Right now, you can see on the screen we have the entrance. This is kind of like the main card for every set. This is the one that kind of gets the mechanics going, because if you don't have mana, you really can't do a lot. You could play a house rule where even if you don't have the entrance, maybe you're getting 2 mana every time you're doing rolling doubles or something like that. There's all kinds of different ways that you could tweak your game so that it plays the way that you want. But in any case, because our game is very casual, we have a Monopoly-esque kind of feel to it. So whenever the player passes the entrance, they gain 2 mana, and we play with a house rule where if you land directly on it, you get a 3rd mana as well. There's certain cards that you're seeing when we created this for the QQ Live kind of presentation. Names have changed and things like that. So the name of this card has changed to, I think, Children of the Dead is what we call it now. This one is 2 adventurers take 2 damage each unless a cleric is present. If a cleric is present, 2 adventurers take 1 damage each. It's kind of a mean card, but you can negate some of that damage by having the right class. When you're playing with 3 adventurers, that's a risk you have to figure out if you're going to take. If you have every class but a cleric, and you know that chambers like this are there, is that a risk that you're willing to take? Fiery Illumination is one that it deals damage, but it also reveals the cards before and after. We had a couple of these cards, this one, and I think we have an adventurer who does stuff like this in this set. It plays a little bit weird online, and certainly after tweaking the process over the months and years at this point, it gets kind of easier to do it online. It's completely different when you're playing it on the table and things like that. It's a different way entirely looking at it. Destruction is one of our meaner cards in this set. This is one of our curses. The player loses the closest of the chambers they own. If it's within 3 spaces from their party, one of their adventurers takes 2 damage as well. This is as far as our curses go, and we knew leading up into the second set that we were going to go mean. And this definitely seals the deal with that kind of in mind. Disintegration Field. The adventurer in the player's party with the lowest HP takes 1 damage. If the adventurer dies, the player immediately rolls and moves again. This is a torture chamber version of our Disintegration Ray from the original set. It's not super evil, but the fact that you could have to roll again makes things really nasty. Hidden Catapult. One adventurer takes 2 damage, move the player forward 5 spaces without triggering the effects of that room. If the player is a thief in their party, they can choose not to move. Pretty easy. That's why it's only a 2 mana cost. We just kind of wanted a fun little quirky bit of art, and Sergey did something really great with the art. I feel like it really sets the mood for Quantum Quest. Doesn't always have to be nasty; it can be fun too. We've got Demon Door, which is a torture chamber version of Shadow Door from the original set. This is one adventurer takes 2 damage. The player moves forward 5 spaces where they trigger the effect of the chamber that they land on. That's the big change for the torture set. If they pass the entrance, they do not collect 2 mana. So a pretty nasty card, and it's one that thieves can get. The Living Chamber is one that we thus far haven't seen in the QQ Live, and probably for good reason, because it would be kind of challenging to pull this off effectively, I think. It's not that it can't be done or anything. I could certainly kind of, move some things around, but this one is, on top of the damage that you deal, you switch the chamber's location with the chamber in front of it, which can be kind of fun. You can completely change the layout of the dungeon over time. Not in any drastic way or anything like that, but we are working on, in the 3rd set, making things a little bit crazier than this, even for the again, you could probably do this online as well, but definitely for tabletop, when you're playing at home with your friends, tweaking things a lot. Plague Rat Den is a torture chamber version of, I think, just our giant rat den from the first set. This one is very similar. The only difference is 2 adventurers take 1 damage instead of 1. We figured we would give a gentle torture chamber that had very little changed, except just dealing a little bit of extra damage. Red Dragon's Lair is a torture chamber version of our Green Dragon's Lair. 1 adventurer takes 3 damage. If the player does not have a warrior, 1 adventurer takes 2 additional damage. Pretty nasty. Not the nastiest one, even in the blue set, I don't believe. And Raging Aura, if the player has a warrior in their party, 1 adventurer takes 2 damage. If the player has no warrior, 1 adventurer takes 1 damage. Typically, a lot of the cards that we have, they deal less damage depending on a class that you have. This, I think, was the first one that we had where we could kind of add to it based on having that adventurer in your party. Spectral Swords, I believe, might have been a torture chamber from the first set. I can't remember off the top of my head. This deals 3 damage to 1 adventurer unless there's a mage in the party. If there is a mage, deal 1 damage to 1 adventurer. So that feels kind of weak for a torture chamber, so it probably was just something that we added to the second set. Frostwave, choose 1. I like these choose 1 cards because it does give the players a little bit more agency. 1 adventurer takes 1 damage and the player loses their next turn, or 2 adventurers take 1 damage and the player rolls 1 die next turn. Now, a lot of the strategy with Quantum Quest is there a benefit to losing your turn? And especially in like the longer games where you're playing like 5 adventurers instead of 3, there's a lot of value in losing your turn. So you definitely have to figure out like what phase of the game are you in. Do you want to try and go around the dungeon quicker? There's a lot there. And then of course when you're the owner of the room and you get to choose, it changes everything fundamentally as well. Mirror Maze is a trap chamber that if the player has 3 or more adventures, 1 adventurer takes 3 damage. If the player has 2 or less adventures, 1 adventurer takes 1 damage. Nothing too crazy there. Blinding Cloud, I think we got Robin Hood covering his poor eyes here. 1 adventurer takes 1 damage, roll 1 die. If you roll 3 or lower, move that many spaces backward. If you roll 4 or higher, move that many spaces forward. Don't trigger chamber effects. Pretty weak card, all things considered. Archlich's Lair is a torture chamber version of the Lich's Lair from the first set. This one is nasty. Deal 1 damage to an adventurer of every available class. Again, if you're playing with more than your 3, we're trying to, I think, make the 3-member party the standard going forward to keep things even more casual, because we're not a super complex game. Quantum Quest is a casual game, and if you're playing with, we've played with up to 3 people, 3 characters each, and we've been able to wrap that up pretty routinely in like 30 minutes. and I think that's a sweet spot for a casual game. So, yeah. Vicious Bear Trap. One adventurer takes 2 damage. Next turn, the player only rolls 1 die to move. Pretty simple. Mysterious Merchant. This is one of our specials. This is just a mana and health swap, one way or the other. And that obviously is inspired by things like the Merchant from like Resident Evil 4, things like that. Windblades. 2 adventurers take 1 damage. Next turn, the player rolls 1 die and moves backwards. Again, pretty simple. Time Crash is another fun one. 1 adventurer takes 1 damage. You move the player back to the space they started from on that turn. Mana Sap. This is a curse. When the player lands on this chamber, they lose 3 mana. If they have no mana or run out due to the effects of this card, one of their adventurers takes 1 damage. I like that one a lot. Potion Cache, just another blessing, another special. Restore 1 health to an adventurer, gain 1 mana. Nothing super beneficial, but anytime you're not landing on a card that's dealing you damage, this is nice. Necromantic Storm is one of my favorite from this set. It's a multi-class card, so either mages or clerics can get it, and then you distribute 2 damage to the player's party, plus an additional damage for every dead adventurer they have, up to 3. Vengeful Apparition, pretty simple. 1 adventurer takes 2 damage if one of the player's adventurers have died, and this goes pretty much hand in hand with Necromantic Storm. 1 adventurer takes an additional damage instead of the 2. Gelatinous Cube. 1 adventurer takes 1 damage and the player loses their next turn, or 1 adventurer takes 2 damage and next turn the player can't capture rooms. Again, this is one of those ones that kind of gives the player a little bit more agency, or the person who owns the room can decide what kind of nasty they want to be. Acid Pit is a torture chamber version of our Spike Pit from the first set. 1 adventurer takes 1 damage. The player's party may not move until they roll a 5 or higher. If the player fails to move, 1 adventurer takes 1 damage. If the player is a thief, add 1 to their roll. This is very similar to 2 of the other cards that you'll find from this set, Gorgon's Gaze and Iron Silk Spider, I believe. And both of those, I think, are similar to this, where it requires a roll of a certain number or higher to proceed forward. And the reason that we kind of did it that way was, like I mentioned earlier, if you are losing your turn, it's kind of a benefit in the late game. So we wanted to make something that maybe kept things moving, got people a little panicky, and gave you an opportunity to get a little bit more engaged. Unholy Shadow is another mean one. This one is another one that gives the player agency, but both of the options are bad. You either lose the room or lose an adventure, and it's pretty nasty. And this poor sap that you see on the card, he has been getting beat up in a couple of cards because he was the hidden catapult orc or goblin as well. Rolling Fireball is one of our favorites. This one is a torture chamber version of Rolling Boulder from the first one. And this one gets me thinking of like Fireball Island and everything like that. So I was very happy to add this to the torture chambers. The first one was mean as anything anyway because it was a distribution of damage based on how far you roll, but this one is they move that many spaces and they trigger the effect where they land, which is just really mean, especially if you are playing with torture chambers. You're playing with other really mean cards as well. Mind Control Dart, pretty simple, but a lot of damage to be dealt. 1 adventurer takes 3 damage and the player immediately rolls again, so if you land on another nasty card including a torture chamber, like, it can deal a lot of damage in 1 turn. Blood Archdemon, I don't think that we've seen too much of in our playthroughs. The 2 adventurers with the highest health take 2 damage. If there is a tie for highest health, every adventurer with the highest health takes 2 damage. So if you start the game with 3 5s and you don't have a warrior in the mix, and you land on this card, all 3 of them take 2 damage. So you all of a sudden just lost 6 damage. And if you're playing with even more, this one could be really, really mean. And this is a torture chamber variant of Blood Demon from the first set. Gorgon's Gaze, we talked about a little bit before. This is 2 adventurers take 1 damage, and they need to roll a 5 or higher in order to move forward. Again, it just kind of keeps things perpetually moving. Nothing too crazy there. The Crusher, if your least healthy hero has 2 or less health, kill that adventurer. If your least healthy hero has 3 or more health, deal 1 damage to them. Just, you see these traps a lot in RPGs and like platformers and stuff like that, so we thought this would be a fun one to add to the mix. And if you ever go to like read the novelization of the Quantum Quest book, you see we like incorporate things like this. So they found this hero stuck in this trap because of this card. It was a fun little way of integrating the game to the novelization. Demon Mercenary, I don't think to this point that we've ever seen this one in the set, and this is, I think, my favorite of reinforcements. This one is a monster chamber that costs 5, but no matter what happens, and it's a big damage dealer. 5 damage is a tremendous amount, especially if you don't have that mana and you can't do anything about it. But the fun thing about this chamber is this Demon Mercenary will allow himself to be purchased by any warriors or thieves, no matter if the chamber is owned by another player. So it definitely mixes things up and changes the mechanics, because there's no other card that we have that does that thus far. Phantom Chains, you can see this poor sap again. I think Phantom Chains is a torture chamber version of Spectral Chains or something like that from the first set. One adventure takes 1 damage. The player's party is moved back where they trigger the effects of the room that they land in. Snare Trap. This is... I kind of put this together specifically for my good buddy Kev. His character, who is in the Tellus universe and everything like that, gets caught in snare traps all the time. So we just did a simple trap like this and kind of wrote the lore around it. So 1 adventure takes 1 damage. If the player has 4 or more adventures in their party, they lose their next turn. We'll probably change this because, again, the new standard is not the full 5 adventures per party. It's going to be 3, I think. So we'll have to tweak this a little bit to feel right with that in mind. And we have some adventurers that have abilities that we'll have to change with that in mind as well. Hydrafly Nest is basically our giant rat of this set. It's claimable by any class. 1 adventure takes 1 damage, and then the only big difference between this one and the rats is next turn you subtract 1 from the player's movement roll. The Kin Malar Portal. This is from the book The Maelstrom. The Kin Malar are like the villains of that book. Has not come out yet. Been working on it for years. If this room is not owned by a player, 1 adventure takes 1 damage, but as soon as it's owned by a player, it deals an additional damage, and once it's haunted, it deals 4. So despite the fact that it's 3 to buy, it can still deal a pretty decent amount of damage. Vampiric Essence is a complicated one because you have to put tokens on it when people die, and then the owner can discard up to 3 tokens to heal 1 health to one of their adventurers per token. This one is a game changer, but it's hard to use properly. You have to land on the card a lot, and then you have to remember to do the tokens and everything. It's a tricky one, but it's still one that I'm happy that we have in the set. Cursed Fountain is a play on the healing fountains that we have from the original set. In this case, you're either losing mana or taking damage instead of healing one of your party. She gets beat up a lot too. Naralindra is one of our book characters, and she was the Vengeful Apparition too. So chronologically, she's probably dying here and then becoming the Vengeful Apparition. Unstable Ooze is another one of my favorites from this set, because this one, again, can become really nasty. It deals damage based on the amount of tokens that are on there, and you add tokens depending on how many adventurers it's killed. Mana Stream is one of the blessings that gives you a mana. Firewhirl is, I think, a torture version of Whirlwind from the original set. So this one is 2 adventurers, each take 2 damage, and then the player immediately moves and rolls again. And then you deal another damage to an adventurer for every player you pass. So the 5 mana here is definitely acceptable with all that in mind. You're doing a lot of damage with this set. Ironbark Grove, this one is another one of the cards that we're probably going to have to change, because you can see if the player has 5 adventures, they must sacrifice one of their adventures, but if you're only playing with 3, this basically is pointless a lot of the time. So we're definitely going to have to tweak that, I think. Blissful Ignorance is another special. The player, again, it's just health versus mana situation. A Weakened Mana Portal. This one is a play off of the Mana Portal from the original set. In the original set, you could land on a Mana Portal and get another adventure for free, basically. But in this case, we wanted to make sure, even if this existed, that you had to kind of pay to play. So it's 5 mana to get an adventure card. Champion of the Void is another one that I don't think that we've seen while we've played, but this one is a torture chamber of Guardian of the Void. So one adventurer takes 1 damage. Next turn, the player rolls 1 die and moves that many places backwards and distributes damage equal to their roll to their adventurers. So similar to Rolling Boulder, but moving backwards. Iron Silk Spider is another one of those Gorgon's Gaze kind of ones. This one is 1 adventurer takes 2 damage, whereas Gorgon's Gaze was 2 adventurers take 1 damage. And then 5 is the magic number across all 3 of those cards that require that. I think that at one point we were playing with one of them having a little bit higher, but when we were doing the testing phase, people were just not getting a 7 or higher to get out of this, and it just felt way too mean. And we've even seen, while we were playing online now, I think poor Rihanna got stuck in these 2 chambers, to the point where she got robbed. So I think 5 is a good number. We'll probably do some 6s and some 7s in the future, but maybe it won't deal as much damage, or maybe it'll do something else like steal a mana or something like that. Brand of Silence. 1 adventurer takes 1 damage. Turn an adventurer card to the side until the player... This is our 7. Okay, this is what it was. So you can continue to move around and everything, but the specific adventurer who you've dealt damage to can't capture chambers. So, yes, you've unalived so quick. Arcane Lightning is a torture chamber of Arcane Lightning Tower, maybe? It wasn't Arcane Lightning, it was Lightning Tower. This is 1 adventure takes 2 damage and the player loses 2 mana. Again, when mana is such a rare commodity in this game, losing 2 at a time is a decent amount, and if you've taken that off the board for yourself, it's worth the 5 mana for sure. Receding Mana Stream, same thing as the regular Mana Stream, except you have to have less than 10 mana for it to work. Mana Spark, 1 adventurer takes 1 damage. If the player uses a character ability in this room, they lose 1 mana. If they use an ultimate spell in this room, they lose 2 additional mana. Very rare that we ever see the ultimate spells being used, so we might tweak this a little bit before we go live, but not 100% sure. Vengeful Titan, one of my other favorites in this set. Nothing too crazy, just a high mana cost, high damage deal. Nothing too crazy about that, and only a warrior can buy it. Phase Shift is another fun one. It's a curse that returns you to the entrance room, but you lose 1 mana and you can't purchase chambers the next turn. So it's mean, but in all honesty, it's not super mean because you could be taking damage as well. War Golem Foundry is a torture chamber version of, I think, just Golem Foundry, it might have been. So this one is if the player has 2 or more adventurers, one of them takes 3 damage. And Abyssal Shade, I think. Oh, no, we still have a couple. 1 adventurer takes 1 damage. If the player doesn't have a cleric in their party, the adventurer takes an additional damage, and the player loses their next turn. Arcane Imp, fun little one that's only a 1 mana cost. But if the adventurer dies, the player also loses mana. Mana Inferno is coming up on the last one. If the player has less than 10 mana, 1 adventurer takes 1 damage. If the player has 10 or more, 1 adventurer takes 2 damage. And our last one here is Chrono Lord, which is a torture chamber version of Chronomancer. 1 adventurer takes 1 damage. The player immediately rolls and moves again, but moves backwards. Pretty nasty if you land on another hard card. Now, this one only deals 1 damage, but, there's so much in the torture set that could keep things going that you could really get into a mess with a card like this. So that is it for the chambers. We're going to take a real quick break because I do have sponsors still who we want to get the word out about their books. So let's head over to that real quick. I'll take a hydration break in the meantime, and when we come back, we'll look at these adventurers too.
And now, a word from our sponsors. A spectacular whirlwind adventure that mystifies as much as it enthralls readers, Raymond Dwayne's Quinine is the sort of epic fantasy that most people would have a hard time dreaming of. Yet, the author has done much with this universe, establishing foundational pieces of rich lore, religious history and prophecy, and wrapping it all together in a package that makes it feel like some of the best pulp fantasy of yesteryear. Indeed, there is a way that Quinine is presented that makes it feel as though this hero has been around for decades. Despite the classic feel, though, it is also wild in its imagination, with blended species bringing a sense of alien majesty to the world, which just so happens to be the massive hand of the goddess. If you'd like to learn more, head over to the Tellust website where you'll be able to find our promotion for Quinine by Raymond Dwayne. Author Kane Soke delivers a stunning and swift dark fantasy with his debut, Gore. The titular hero is, at once, in a world that is overwhelmed by evil, but also the only one who could possibly stand against the demonic onslaught. Soke isn't afraid to really throw everything he's got at his hero, and the book has more than enough blood and grit to show for it. But there's a method to the author's madness. Dark and dreary as they may be, the scenes are written beautifully. As rough as the world is, the dialogue is chosen with care and delivered as witty and fun repartee. It's a quick read, perfect for unwinding over the weekend. If you've been looking for a dark fantasy with tons of spectacle that feels like a fun treat, don't wait. Check out our promo for Gore by Kane Soke on the Tellust website. Okay, we are back. I wanted to thank everybody for letting those sponsors come through. They really help to keep the lights on and everything, so to speak. So thank you for that. We are back looking at the hero characters, the adventurers from the Quantum Quest Reinforcement set that we're playing with on QQ Live. So we're just going to go through these pretty quick and talk about like maybe changes that we will make before we release this set. Ula Windrock, and by the way, this is not in alphabetical order or anything. I randomized the way that these show up. Same thing as with the chambers, because when I'm putting things together, which we might have time for a little bit later, I don't want to know intrinsically like, all right, like that's one of the A's or something like that. So I if I'm playing, I know what to look out for. Like I want to be caught off guard, so to speak. So Ula Windrock, he's a troll healer that was raised by dwarves, so he's a cleric. If there are at least 2 dwarves in the party, monster chambers cost 1 less mana to purchase. The whole shtick of this was when we were playing with 5 adventurers, 2 dwarves was not unheard of to get, but it's a lot harder to mash those 2 dwarves into a 3-party set, or a 3-adventurer party rather. So we might change this to reflect, maybe it's just 1 dwarf in the party. Etrius Coldwhistle, nothing too crazy about him. A cleric. He is a character who we introduced in our very first book ever, Bindings of Fate. He was like a flashback character, like you never see him alive or anything. But that's the nice thing about Quantum Quest. You can bring alive characters into the mix, but you can bring characters who died into the mix as well. You can bring multiversal versions of characters. So you could technically, right now we have all these characters, but there's no reason that we can't bring in like the 4th or 5th set a different version of Etrius or something like that into the mix that might have a different power set, a different class, different health, certainly different art, things like that. So I think that's the fun of the multiverse that you get to play with in Quantum Quest. Shudrick Core, brand new character for the set. He's a goblin thief, nothing too crazy there. Marin Dath is a character that we have in one of our books, Heart of the Forest, and you can see he's got the little orange headband. That's because he's inspired by Michelangelo, the Ninja Turtle. Gruner Zarek, this is our poor goblin who got mashed up in 3 of the chambers from the reinforcement set. He's a goblin warrior, kind of weak as far as the warriors go. The warriors are known to have a lot of health, so he goes through all 3 of those rooms and he's pretty much done for. Ylva Tychos, she is named after a dwarven queen in Rhianna's Midwinter Requiem story, so it was kind of fun to have some of that lore. And you can see the shtick of this art was a lot of times in the art that we have in the snowy background, we kind of put their feet like under the snow, but we're trying to say that she's so light-footed that she doesn't sink into the snow. Durin Nighthand, brand new for the reinforcement set, not in any previous story or anything like that, but I really like him. I think Sergei put together a very cool version of this dwarf. Just a healthy cleric and not too much else, just a lot of fun. Vione is a character from The Fall. She was a half-elf who met a demise that was unpleasant.
and she is a seer, so she's got the mage class, but you can kind of use her to get chambers without taking the risk of landing on them, which is kind of fun. It does cost mana to do it, but it's still kind of a fun tweak on the mechanics, so I'm a fan of that. She's on the weaker side, as are most mages, so it is imperative to use her ability early before she's unalived. Xandar Mirafarin, he is brand new to the world through Quantum Quest. He is a cleric, kind of a shaman-esque kind of figure, the king of the swamp, so to speak. Just a healthy cleric, nothing too crazy here. Manali Varezo, she is another QQ exclusive, just a Kaja mage who very likely could be from the same kind of place that Kayonani is from. Durza Karzan, brand new to QQ, nothing crazy here, just a thief, kind of on the weaker side as far as thieves go, and just a cool look, nothing crazy there. Yara Manaforge, one of my favorites, because she kind of looks like Rihanna. Like, if you put the card up to Rihanna's face, you're like, yeah, I could see it. She's one of the ones that we're definitely going to have to change, because, again, if 3 is going to be the magic number, we don't want to have a card that says, hey, you need 4 other adventurers in the party. And considering she's got so little health, I think if there are 2 other adventurers in the party, rolling double gives 2 mana instead of 1 is completely viable. Pertidash, brand new to the world through QQ, just a healthy cleric, 6 health. Kind of has like a bohemian look to her. Vyres Rodan, another brand new to QQ, just a thief, kobold, just a cute little puppy dog. I think Vyres was named after a dog that a babysitter that watched me had. So just a reference. I love animals, and I like to try and immortalize them, so that's kind of a nice reference to a dog that I grew up with. Jatless Crest is one of my favorites. Not necessarily like the ability or anything like that, but just the way he looks. He is kind of steampunky in his presentation, and we don't have too many of that. And you can see here, I had mentioned that, like, on the snowy ones, we like kind of sink them into the snow, and in this case, like, we kind of like semi obscure them in like the water, so you can see his feet in the swamp water and everything like that. So this one is, if at least 2 more Laganos are in the party, trap rooms cost 1 less to purchase. Again, this one might be one that we change. Instead of 2, maybe you only need 1 more Lagano, because it's so rare to get 2 of the same race. You figure there's something like 40 adventurers, and there's between 3 and 4 of each race, so it is very tough to get those. I mean, if you're mixing sets, maybe not as much, probably just as much when you really think about it, but yeah. Roka Barazia, brand new to the universe through QQ, just a healthy cleric Rhinotaur. Aurel is one of Aaron Canton's creations for the Tellus universe. There was a story that he wrote called Practical Warrior, and Aurel was actually the villain. But you can see it's kind of that same thing that we were talking about with that chamber fire illumination. When Aurel's party lands in a room, you can flip over the adjacent rooms that have yet to be revealed. Just kind of reveals things quicker. Nothing hugely, game-changing about it. Just fun to have. Malagath is a special card that we added once we kind of like add something last minute for each of these things. So for like the first set, it was Reese and Nersha, because they were directly related to like why Quantum Quest happened, really. And then we have Malagath and Virgil, who are characters who they started to show up in the second Tales of Tell short stories. Malagath is the dungeon lord. He's the lord of the dungeon. You can kind of see like the resemblance with the dungeon door in back of him, and he is the only card thus far that we have. You can see like the red glow behind the sword, because while he is a warrior, you can pay to change his class in a couple of different ways. So he's one of the nicest cards to get if you can, because especially when you're playing with 3 adventurers, you don't have all the classes available to you, but if you have Malagath, you do. So it is a fun notion to play with. Straka Radley, brand new to the QQ universe. Well, and to tell us through the QQ universe, if she has 4 or more health, she also counts as a warrior. Somewhat similar to Malagath. She is a dual class, and we don't have any of like the traditional dual classes that we have from the first set. So we wanted to try and figure out like fun other ways to get them here. And you can see she's got a like a spiked mace that is shaped like a skull as well. She's just a cool character. Denal Gamor, we didn't have any bards, so we definitely decided a Kasha bard would be fun to have. So his mechanic is fun as well. You draw him, you gain 2 mana. When you lose him, you lose 3 mana. So it's a nice little bump in the front, but you pay for losing him. Erin Maddox, she is new to the Tellus universe as of QQ. But since we've been working on all this for the past couple of years, we actually have like cute art for her that Warren Zuen Lee made for us, to the point where we'll probably make a short story for her just to introduce her to the world. And she is a technomancer, so she has like teleporty kind of spells, and she is going to be in the Viscosa Wildcats, the Battle Cats, I think they're called, Tower Sphere team. So she can, again, her set, her ability is to move her forward or backward based on your roll. So just something fun for her. Lucinda is a character from the Mageborn books, so she's introduced and transformed. When she's drawn, you may draw a temporary adventurer card and place it over one of your existing cards. After 3 turns, discard the temporary one. Damage incurred does not affect the original adventurer. So, like, really nice card to have. You can just deal damage like crazy to somebody and not have to pay for it. So, a mage with almost a clerical ability. Norala Ingus, just a QQ origin character. Just a mage with a decent amount of health. Suja Mac, she is one of the cover characters. She is a thief who we liked the design, I think, so much that we ended up saying that we were going to add her to the second Heart of the Forest book. So she is going to be one of the characters in Heart of the Sea. Jindara Kithis, just an origin QQ character, a healthy warrior. This is one of the Logano that if you had Jatless would bump up his ability. Keanu Burris, he is in the novelization for Quantum Quest, and the way that his story tracks out, we ended up making like one of our earliest like Tellus crossover maps. We had this one, and then maybe there was one other one before that one, where we had like a crossover. So it was like map 20 of like the 90 that we have so far. Keanu is like a Hail Mary play. If you have him at full health, you can sacrifice him and steal a chamber from another player. Bozak Brudag is another one of the cover characters. If he's the only adventurer in the party, rooms cost 1 less mana. If you get to that point, he's not going to do too much for you because he's a very sickly little boy. He's only got 2 health. Keitha Krug, QQ origin character, one of the healthier ones in the set, with 8 health. It's pretty nice for her. I just noticed that we have Dwarf and Null in lowercase, but Rhinotaur in uppercase, so we're going to have to clean that up. Jandar Roven, QQ origin, just a elf. He's from Gwyndlar, so he's one of our first sigils that we went off of his character stuff to make the sigil. Londi Talbian, another just QQ origin character, but he is, I think, one of our healthier thieves across both sets. Frieza Kazina, she is a Minotaur cleric. We didn't have a Minotaur cleric, I don't think, in the first set, so we wanted to add something a little bit here. If she has at least 4 health, you may sacrifice her to take control of an unclaimed chamber with no mana cost to you. So similar to Keanu, but you won't steal a chamber or anything like that. And then here we get to Virgil. He was the other like special character that we added to the set. He is at this point the healthiest starting health character that you get with 10 health, and the reason for that is because you don't you can only change. Excuse me. His whole thing is you can take away his health to get chambers as long as you have the requisite class in your party. So he's kind of like a mana vault in certain ways. So we definitely wanted to kind of change up the mechanics somewhat. Valda Irian, QQ Arjun, Kaja Cleric, Kelvin Dracos, one of our other cover characters, and obviously one of the folks from the Telos universe. He's been around since the very beginning. He's gone through a couple of name changes and everything like that. Nothing super crazy about his ability. He just lets you reveal 3 things on the board. You can't do anything with them. It's just, it kind of goes hand in hand with his ability in the new timeline. He's got like enhanced vision, but he's a healthy warrior with 7 health. Jai Shadiri, just a cool looking Kaja character. He's a warrior with 8 health. And, QQ Origin character. Oleg Tharsi, he's our last, I think. That would be number 4. He's our last cover art character. Origin is in QQ, so nothing too crazy there. A relatively healthy mage character with 4 health. Artek Saltball, one of my favorites from the set. He doesn't do anything special. He's just a fun little Null character that you don't really see too many Null pirates or anything like that. Fango Pace, one of the ones that every time he comes up, like, I can't help but think that like he reminds me of like a Star Wars character. Like, the name just very much fits the Star Wars universe. Same kind of health scheme as Oleg, a 4 health mage. Nothing too crazy there. Gorak Sharo, he is a Minotaur cleric, 6 health. Kind of weak on the cleric side of things. Nothing too crazy. QQ Origin. I think we're coming down to the wire here. We're up to our last ones. Ada Urtark. She is a claw wielding Null from probably the same region as Kayonani and Manali and stuff like that. Weaker on the warrior side, but still a cool character nonetheless. Nara Lindra is one of our book characters. She's one of the Whisperwind Elves, so you can see her ability kind of reflects that. When she's drawn, you can place 2 tokens on her. At the cost of 1 token, the player may move the party to any room they currently own. So a kind of tweak on her ability. And it can help out a lot. Like, if you have a room very close to the entrance, if you play your cards right, pun intended, you can get like a bonus, like 4 mana, relatively easy. And then I think we still have a decent amount. Attune Malik, QQ Origin, sort of like middle of the road thief with 5 hit points. Razin Teft, QQ Origin. We got a lot of 4 health mages. You figure if you're not giving them an ability, like, you want them to be maybe a little less squishy. So Zira Kamna, QQ Origin, cleric with kind of middle of the road health. Elmera Light Dasher is one of the fun ones that we have. When she's drawn, you can choose to move 5 extra spaces on their next turn. Just kind of, we wanted the thieves definitely have like a bonus because you get to start first. You get to potentially gain chambers before anybody else, but she helps you get further in than anybody else, so you don't have to contend with other people as much, and she helps you cross that entrance faster than anybody else as well. So that's pretty nice. Mammon Durthic, simple stuff. Probably one of the weakest clerics that we have, but just a cute little dude with a caduceus. I think that's what they're called. Runa Lanissa, he's a play on the Lannisters from Game of Thrones. A Lanissa never pays their debts. Seriously, that's how you end up broke. By far our weakest cleric, I think. I don't think that there's any cleric that has worse than 4 health. Carmela Luja, for a while, she was showing up in just about every one of our QQ Live games with 7 health as a warrior. That's pretty healthy. Onyx Grouse, he's a QQ Origin character as well. Again, we're back to the 4 health mages. Aquila Creasel, one of the weirder complex ones. When she dies, you flip the room that she died in upside down. We don't do that. We just put a token. But the next player who passes that room deals 1 damage to one of their adventurers and flips the card right side up. And Pythodoran, she's QQ Origin as well. If Pythod dies, the player can move the party to the entrance of the dungeon without collecting 2 mana. Maybe you've got like a string of chambers close to the entrance that might keep you in the game a little longer. And then I still can't believe it. We still have a bunch. In the next set that we're working on, we cut back a lot. We've got like a nice set of 30 for 3 different categories because we're introducing a new category to the game. So 30 adventures, 30 chambers, and 30 of this new card type. Tybalt is just a fun little flavor text on Guard Sharpay. Kind of weak on the warrior side of things, but still fun. Conrad the Blessed is a character from, he showed up at first in As Darkness Falls, which was the second book in the Tellus universe, and he's shown up in a short story, and he also showed up in Wild Magic, the third book in the Ancestral Magic trilogy. He has a power in the books where, like, he kind of became like a shadow priest in a way. He has to discharge like bad magic to be able to heal again. So in this case, you spend 1 mana to deal 1 damage to one adventurer in the party and heal 1 damage to another. So it's kind of like a balancing ability. And if you find like, hey, all the warrior chambers are all bought up, and I have these other people in the party that I want to heal, maybe you get rid of your warrior character. Eldon Goshen, he is a relatively weak warrior character. QQ Origin, nothing too crazy there. Burn a Dark Mantle, again, basically the exact same thing as Eldon. You just switch out a gnome for a dwarf and a male for a female. And Kirta is our last one. Kirta is a character who is related to a character in a novella that I wrote, and one of our artists was just like, hey, I want to do this, so she kind of created this character for us. She is a goblin who is looking for vengeance for her father. Nothing too crazy there, just a fun little set of stuff there. What we're going to do, we didn't even get to an hour yet, and I still got a little fuel in the tank. So what we're going to do, I'll show you how I come up with some of these things. So right now, these numbers were from a previous set, so we can ignore this. And what we'll do is we'll delete these out. You can see the 3 names of our, or the 4 names of our next players. And I'm going to bring up the adventures set on my computer over here. So I'm going to hit delete one more time, and it'll bring us to our first random number generator, or randomly generated number, I should say. So this is going to be the first card for Craig. So he's got number 29, which is going to be, I think this is Atun Malik, Jandar Revan. So we're going to do this the old-fashioned way, like we're actually playing with cards. So 16 is Roko Barasia, I think. Yep. So we're going to give that one to Dan. Kev is going to get 49, which is Onyx Grouse. I'll keep on throwing these up on the screen just so you can see it. So that's Onyx Grouse. And my first one is 53. Actually, I can just do it this way. Conrad. So we were just talking about him. I think Conrad is the first one with a special ability. So I marked that with I marked that with a star. Oh, you know what it is? Well, I mean, you're seeing what I'm doing. I usually keep the numbers here, and that's how I do the math. But I don't think we need to do it. I've been doing this so much that I don't really need to do it like that anymore. 34 is Kelvin Dracos. So we'll go over to 34 to verify that. So Craig gets that. Every time Kev plays, somebody gets the character that's kind of like lately inspired by him. Alright, so we're not going to give Dan Conrad again. because thus far we don't play like that. We could definitely do like a house game where that's the way we play, but thus far we haven't. Artak Saltpaw, so he gets one of the ones that I like. I'm talking too much, and my throat is starting to bother me. Let me just close that one and bring it up. This is Marindath. So Kev gets to play with a Ninja Turtle Gremlin rather. 19 is my second character. So I get, ooh, this is interesting. I got Straka Radley. I gotta take a second to drink some water. Whew. Alright, 54 is Elden Goshen. So that's the third character that Craig gets. I think he's got 3 warriors, so that might be one of those things where we tell him, you know, if you want, you can take a mulligan at the cost of 2 mana to see if you get any better sets, because warriors have a lot of health, and that's like, if you did want to like ride or die, that's not a bad idea. But anyway, 32 is Dan's. 32 is Virgil. Virgil's a good one. Kev gets 40, which is Aito. And my final one is 5, who is that poor sap who we've seen a couple of times. He's the one that gets smashed in all those chambers. So Grunar Zarek. Alright, so those are our characters from this set. And then typically what I'll do is show you what I do. I go to each of the folks. Let me change this real quick just because it's a previous person. So what I would do, I don't even know if this is working the right way. Oh, you're not going to be able to see it. Never mind. I have, you know what I can do? I'll show you exactly how I send it. Because I can do a snip tool. Maybe. So what I'll do is I'll take a little snip of my OBS screen and I'll show them the characters that they have. So this is not actually Craig's set. This was Gerard's from a previous game, but he would see these characters and get to decide, you know, are these characters that you would like, or would you like to dial it back? Now, typically, if the person is playing QQ Live, it's the first time that they're playing, because we're trying to use it as a platform for people to talk about their creative endeavors and things like that. So, a lot of people are just like, I have no idea how the game is really going to play, so just let me take the dice where they land. So, let's real quick, there's the other component of this, which is figuring out the dungeon layout. So this one right now I think is just a copy of 821. So what we're going to do is we'll hit delete 3 times. That's just a fun magic number that I like. And we'll take this, move it into the static zone. So we'll move them in just as values. And I noticed that it just kind of did its own thing anyway, so it doesn't matter. Let's bring it into the duplicate set as well. And then what we'll do is we'll do a sort. Just the current selection, and we're just going to sort from smallest to largest, and then this will let us know if we have any duplicates. So we know that we have 24 as a duplicate, and then typically what I will do is I see the gelatinous cube here and here, and the second one is usually the one that I change. So I know that we don't have a 14, so I can see the randomizer right over here is a 14. So Blinding Cloud is the next one that we get. We also know that 42 is a dupe, so Ironbark Grove is going to be 16, because we don't have... Let me back that up. 16, so that becomes Vicious Bear Trap, and then 45 is our other one. Here's the first one, Champion of the Void, and then this one becomes, it won't become 17 because we already have 17. We already have 11. We already have 26. We do not have 46. So this one becomes 46, which is Iron Silk Spider. So that is going to be our setup for the 829 game. What you can do just to verify is we can bring that back to the duplicate checker, and we can go into the sort again, smallest to largest, just the current selection, and no more duplicates. Just so everyone knows, the reason that we're able to do it this way is because I made a crazy amount of information here, randomizing all these cards. And eventually, the idea is once we get to a certain amount of followers, we're going to unlock like mixed mode, where you're going to be able to play with every one of the cards from the from whatever sets. So like if we were playing our third expansion and we were playing with that, we wouldn't just have the 56 dungeon chambers, 45 dungeon chambers. We would have, well, however many, 130 or something like that. So it will really kind of open up the game in a lot of different ways. Same thing with the adventures. We would have a lot more adventures to play with. So just, something that you can tell all your friends. Not subscribe, but follow on twitch.tv/ThatTellUsGuy in order to get us that much closer to unlocking those kind of new modes and stuff. All right, that is going to cut. You can tell my brain is fried. That's going to be it for today. We went through a lot of stuff, and it was a different kind of QQ Live. But in 2 weeks, we'll be back with the actual exhibition game that we'll be playing with 2 new players and 2 returning players. Let's go over to our show closing page. So, folks, on the screen right now, you should find all the places that you can find Tellus content out on the internet. Tellus.com is a great first place to go to because it'll usually lead you to our other projects. We do have a couple of premium sites where you can buy some of our products, mostly like tabletop stuff. So patreon.com/Tellus. You can get map stuff on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, assuming I'm feeling well. We have, I think at this point, over 100 maps on Patreon, not including like the extra 300 variants. And then sometimes on Tuesdays and Thursdays we drop some art as well. Again, health pending. Tellus.etsy.com is where you can find premium versions of our physical goods. So we currently have 63 of our battle maps up on Etsy. I try and get at least one more every week up there, but we also have other things there like stickers, bookmarks. We've got Rana's one of a kind handcrafted magic wands, and you can find more of them on TikTok.com/@WeirdWitchWands. There's another TikTok channel that you should go and check out because by far the most popular person who's ever been on this channel is Luna, our dog, who's got, I think she's up to 6.8 million views on one of her videos now. So like every person who's been on here, myself included, we pale in comparison to her awe and her splendor. BattleMapFantasy.com will sometimes work and sometimes not. It's just a link to our Drive-Thru RPG partner page. We have all the maps that you can find on Patreon on there if you would rather buy those maps, one-to-one instead of doing like a subscription. The last 2 places that I'll bring your attention to, youtube.com/@WorldOfTellus is where you're going to want to go to find these videos after they drop off the Twitch platform. But twitch.tv/ThatTellusGuy is the only place where you can chat with us live, earn quest coins to subscribe queue up for future QQ lives, and tell me to hydrate, tell me to posture check, all that funny stuff. I'm surprised that I was able to manage to go an hour today, but that is going to wrap us up for today. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. And I miss you.